Eggs? Huh? Cereal? What was your breakfast? I have an egg here somewhere. Where's my egg? Oh, I can't find it. Oh, there it is. Hold on. Oh, now there's this egg, right? Who had an egg today? Good. Egg is wonderful, right? An egg is a miracle. An egg has a hard shell. That was one of the big revolutions in life. When animals started making hard-shelled eggs, they could live in drier places in the world. Before hard-shelled eggs, you had eggs with soft shells like that of a turtle, and a turtle has to live near water. It has to bury its eggs in the ground in a moist place. If the eggs dry out, it's over. A chicken can make a hard shelled egg, and a chicken doesn't have to bury its eggs in the ground. It can lay the eggs on a dry place, and it is fine, right? That enabled a chicken to live further inland. It didn't have to live right by the ocean or right by the water. It can, because of that hard shelled egg, it could live way out in the land, right? And that enabled life, not just with chickens, not just with birds, but lizards. They have hard shelled eggs. What else? The early mammals had hard shelled eggs. Um, but the the egg enabled life to move out onto the land. Uh, Mammals have eggs inside of us that don't have shells, but they're not laid outside. They're kept inside. And that was another big innovation, another big step that enabled life to move further out into the world. So we have this egg, which is a revolution. Here is another revolution. What do we have here? What's this? Who said that? Bread? Hmm? Oh, Beatrice said it. Okay, bread, right? So we have bread. Bread was part of the human revolution. We find people making bread all over the world. Here I have a list of breads that is a huge list of breads, all kinds of breads, corn breads, wheat breads, flat breads, breads made out of rice, breads made out of barley, breads made out of wheat. Um, how do you make bread? Who's made bread? How many people have made bread? Uh huh. Uh huh. So bread has a couple of simple ingredients, right? You have wheat, flour. right? You have flour, water, you might have some oil, you might have an egg, you might have some yeast. Hmm? And from that, you have bread. Bread changed the world. Bread enabled people to start building towns and villages and eventually cities. Bread enabled people to live in a settled place. Before bread, people had to roam around to try to find food, and they were called what? They were called nomads. They didn't have a settled place per se, or maybe they did, but it was seasonal because they had to follow the animals and plants. They had a lot of knowledge, and they had to know where things were growing. They had to know how to dig it up, but they didn't make bread. They didn't know how to do that, and so they had to be moving all the time. When people learned to make bread, they could settle down. They could stay in one place, right? Because then you could make food and for yourself there, and you didn't have to wander all around the world to find your next meal. And that was a big revolution. And according to this article, that may have started 30,000 years ago when people first found the wild grains that were growing in certain places, and they learned that if you ground those grains up and mixed it with water, you had a simple bread. And that's changed society. In fact, in the Bible, we talk about the first book is Genesis, right? In the Bible, and it talks about Adam and Eve wandering around in Eden, and God says, you can have any fruit or whatever plant and you can eat it. But Adam and Eve just were wandering around eating the fruit of Eden until they ate the wrong fruit, right? And what did God say? You're going to be banished from Eden, and you're going to have to go out there and make your food by the sweat of your brow. That's interesting, no? Now you are going to become a farmer, in other words. You are going to grow your food. And that changed everything. And that's why, in a way, God was pretty upset because he knew as long as people were eating fruits from the Garden of Eden and vegetables and what have you, maybe they lived a more peaceful life. Maybe they didn't settle into cities and create armies eventually. Um, so the Garden of Eden tells us a story about the transition from people who ate foods that they found on trees and such or dug up or whatever, the transition of that to growing your own food and how that changed the world and how that made the world a place for mischief as well. Um, as soon as in the garden, it's interesting. I mean, as soon as Adam and Eve leave the Garden of Eden and have their first children, the children are involved in a murder, right? And these, right, Cain and Abel, are one kills the other. I forget who. But it's just, where is thy brother? So Abel kills Cain, I believe. Um, but you can correct me. Anyway, society changed because society had learned to grow its own food. And that means not only bread, but raising animals, um, and raising chickens for eggs, for example, and for meat. That changed the world. The chicken was a wild animal that lived in Asia, that lived in where? Probably in China. So the chicken was a bird that lived in the forests, or jungles in China. And then people learned that if you put them in a confined area, you could keep them and they would lay eggs for you. And you could have meat when you wanted to. You didn't have to go out and find something that was running around and try to catch it, which is hard. Um, but now you could have a chicken that you could just take from your backyard. So that changed the world, and made all sorts of things possible. Once you had um, people living in communities, settled communities, then you have people who started making pots, dishes, um, furniture. A whole world opened up. People were engaged in different new activities. It was a very new and different world, and we've never gone back. Right? Questions or comments? Maybe I'll read a little poetry here. This is from Mary Oliver. Form, form is certainty. All nature knows this, and we have no greater adviser. Clouds have forms, porous and shape-shifting, bumptious, fleecy. They are what clouds need to be clouds. See a flock of them come on the sled of the wind, all kneeling above the blue sea. And in the blue water, see the dolphin built to leap, the sea mouse skittering over the top of the ocean. See the ropey kelp with its air-filled bladders tugging it upward. See the albatross floating day after day on its three-jointed wings. Each form sets a tone, enables a destiny, strikes a note in the universe like no other. How can we ever stop looking? How can we even turn away? The fox beside the icy pond has been feeding on an old frozen raccoon, a bad heap, bones and tallow and skin, but better than nothing. For weeks, on my early walk along this path, I saw the fox as he dipped into the dark dish of the frozen body. So the world is a strange and wondrous place. A mosquito finds us in the dark by the heat of our bodies, and by the carbon dioxide which we exhale as we breathe. Incredible. The mosquito likes to bite us because it needs blood to for its eggs. How amazing is that? The mosquito uses our blood to feed its eggs inside of its body. And it's only the females that bite, which is it's only the females that bite, right? Um, that's maybe true in a lot of different cases. Um, Nature is a wonder. The female mosquito has a special needle in its nose that is able to penetrate the skin and draw out blood. It's made of 6 different needles, and these needles perform different things. Like 2 of them cut into the skin, the others penetrate the skin, and then the final ones, I think 1 or 2 of them actually draws the blood. At the same time, the mosquito puts out a chemical that enables the blood to flow without clotting. Because anytime you expose our blood to the air, it starts to bunch up, and that wouldn't be good for a mosquito. So the mosquito has a certain chemical that enables the blood to flow. How amazing is that? Hmm? What is a mosquito? You know, huh? Mosquito is a form of life, you might say, that has taken on particular qualities to enable it to survive. Right? It has wonderful wings that enable it to fly in very precise ways. It has this needle in its nose that enables it to withdraw the blood. It has a chemistry that enables the blood to flow into the mosquito. Um, and it's a kind of perfect machine. I think the only imperfect part of it is that the mosquito makes noise as it comes to us, and then we can swat it. Maybe nature will make a mosquito someday that doesn't make any noise. Nature is constantly improving itself so that you have a fly, for example, which is able to fly in amazing ways, um, and is able to avoid being hit by someone with a fly swatter or a newspaper, because the fly is very sensitive to changes in the air, changes in the pressure of the air. If you try to swat a fly, the fly feels the pressure of the air changing, and that tells the fly to get out of there. Well, that's pretty amazing, isn't it? Um, Flies have 2 wings and 2 of these little um, objects that look like little dumbbells, or half a dumbbell that is attached to behind the wings. And these little dumbbells tell the fly how it's um, how it's flying. They inform the fly if it's up or down or sideways, what direction it's going in. If a scientist cuts those things off, the fly doesn't know where it is in space, and will tumble and fly into the table. It'll do all kinds of things. Um, dangerous to the fly. But with those little things, those little dumbbell-like things, which used to be wings, most insects that fly have four wings, but a fly has two wings. The other two wings became these little dumbbells that inform the fly how where it is in space. Incredible, right? Um, so life is always changing. Maybe 40 million years ago, flies had four wings and um, operated in a different way. But today they have two wings. Um, how did flies develop wings? We don't know. Insects began in the oceans, we think, or in waters, but developed ways of living out on the land. And they developed wings. How incredible is that? Why would they do that? We don't know, but it enabled them to invade the whole world. The same with birds. The birds came from dinosaurs. Birds were once dinosaurs, and then they developed feathers. The dinosaurs were the first animals to develop feathers. And these feathers were very fine down at first, just good to keep a dinosaur warm in a cold place. But then they developed wing-like feathers and learned to fly. And some dinosaurs were very much like birds, except they had teeth and they had claws on their wings. Eventually, they lost the teeth and they lost the claws, and now they are the birds we have around us today. So, but the development of wings was a major change in life. By the way, the birds are the only dinosaurs that survived. After the great meteor hit the Earth 66 million years ago, a great rock from 66 million years ago, something amazing happened. A great rock from space hit the Earth and caused the Earth to go into a cooling period, which wiped out a lot of the food for much of the animal life on the Earth. And the dinosaurs all died out. That's why we don't have dinosaurs today, except for the birds, which were able somehow to maybe fly to places that were safer and were enabled these bird dinosaurs to survive. It's an amazing story, but the dinosaurs weren't the only ones to develop wings. Insects had developed wings even before the dinosaurs, and mammals also developed wings, and today we have bats, right? Bats have wings, but they're mammals, like us. And so the wing has been developed by different forms of life over time, many, many different times. And that's pretty amazing, you know, how life develops these things necessary to move it along, to change it. We have the first fish that developed a lung and were able to live outside the water for short periods, but later they could live for longer times. But the fish were the first to develop a lung. Pretty amazing, right? Why? How? Nobody knows. We do have a story that, well, we do have evidence that the fish use what is called a swim bladder, which is like a case inside the fish that is full of air that keeps the fish at a certain place in the water, up or down. So the fish uses that to guide it when it's moving up or down in the water. That became a lung and enabled the fish to breathe outside the water. Fish also developed legs eventually, which enabled the now you could have a lizard. Pretty amazing. I'm going to end here. I want to thank every one of you for your attention and questions and participation, and just your interest. Which thank you very very much. I really appreciate it. Um, so hopefully we'll get together again next week. I hope you found this interesting. Um, we are living in every moment is a miracle. Every breath we take is a wonder. Be well. Take care. Thank you for being in class. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. All right, we're going to end here. I'm going to.
Thank you, Barry.
Oh, you're welcome.
You have a good weekend.
Thank you. You too. Be well, stay safe, and continue the wonder.
Have a good one.
You too.